I was asked by a client recently about my tarot journey and how I got my tarot reading skills to the place that they're at. If you're interested in my life story, and this client had read my book, so he knew my story of moving to Orkney, training to be a shaman, falling pregnant, etc., etc. So the story of how I got to here is in my book. Perhaps one of the best explanations of how I got to here is my tarot deck, which I'm pretty sure is about 6 years old now. So you can see it is well used. Some might say too well used, but that gives some indication, both personally and professionally, of just how many times I shuffle this deck. But I've got some other cards because my brain works using the tarot cards and the runes. I process information through cards and runes. So it only felt right to share with you some of the cards, particularly two that I think are very, very pertinent to who I am as a tarot reader, and then a few that I think actually are more universally sort of important. The first one, it's one of my all-time favorite tarot cards, is the card that I personally most identify with, the Page of Wands. I think people get the court cards wrong. They see it as a hierarchy. They're aiming to be the king, and they're not seeing the value of all 16 court cards. Now, I may moan about the Queen of Cups, but that says more about me than the Queen of Cups. I think that each of the court cards is equally valid as a psychological profile that we should hopefully be able to step into when we need it. The Page of Wands is about passion, enthusiasm, and being absorbed in something that you love. He is absorbed by his staff here, and that is how I feel about tarot. I am never bored about tarot. I may have spent my day writing about tarot. You may be my 8th or 9th client. I may be personally tired. I may be emotionally tired. But I can guarantee that when I start shuffling the cards, I am excited to see what comes up. And the day that I am bored of tarot, it's the day that I stop. It's that simple. And the other thing about all of the pages, which I think is so important, is they're playful. We need to be playful with tarot. We need to be looking at the cards in different ways. We need to be finding new ways to work with them, new spreads, new ways to choose the cards, new questions. Never think that you have the perfect formula for reading the cards, because there isn't one. There is being in the moment, being in tune with your skill set, and then being playful to explore tarot. And the thing is, when we're playful, sometimes we'll make mistakes. I've done this sometimes with a client. I'll be putting a spread out and I'll put it back, and an astute client will say, what are you doing? And usually my answer is, I'm putting this spread back because it was just saying everything you were saying. I chose the question too early, or I wasn't getting any sense, so I'm putting it back and starting again. So I love this playful nature of being totally absorbed in what you're doing. The other card that I think probably defines me as a tarot reader is the Ace of Swords. Now, this isn't so much about me finding truth in the cards. More, this is about the fact that I always look for validation for my readings. If I'm reading for myself or if I'm reading for a client, I'm going to say almost always, because there's always an exception to the rule, but I will check in. I will include something in my spread that is either the past or the current situation. And if you are my client, I will ask you, does that feel right? Does that resonate with you? If you say no, I might ask why. I may ask for feedback. I may decide to argue back gently with you, or I might do a different spread and look at it from a different angle. But I'm never going to not listen to you, because I want to know that I'm on point. And the only way, if I'm reading for someone else, I can know I'm on point is if I ask you. Of course, this is harder with email readings, but most of my clients now, including my email clients, come back. And the one thing I can tell you about building a tarot business with repeat clients is if I've got it wrong, people will tell me. Do I get it wrong when it comes to prediction? Of course I do. The future's not fixed. That's what we need to know, I think, about tarot. I get it right a surprisingly amount of times, and sometimes it's more to do with the situation than my tarot reading abilities. But these, I think, are the cards that define me as a reader. Though if you're my client, you may disagree. So hey, if you've had a tarot reading with me and you feel that there are other cards that might be more important in my role as a tarot reader, do put them in the comments because I would love to know. Other cards that I think are important: the King of Cups. Client care is something I bang on an awful lot about, and I do not think it is taken seriously enough in the tarot reading world. Maybe it's because I come from a background of childcare that I think that safeguarding is so important. But I think if we are reading for a client, then we need to take their psychological and emotional safety seriously. And we need to be aware that any one of our clients could be suicidal. They could be in an abusive relationship. They could be facing their own terminal illness or the terminal illness of a loved one. We need to consider the impact of our reading on our clients, I think. We need to be a safe space. I take no judgment really, really importantly when I read for a client. I believe that when I read for a client, I am coming from a place of universal love or unconditional love. The only judgment I will make, and this is the point when I will either rephrase a question or stop reading, is if you are genuinely using my reading for revenge. If you are trying to hurt someone using my reading, that's a no. Other than that, I always try to hold no judgment. This was really tested when my husband was having affairs, and I was then reading for people that were having affairs, and I really had to sit with it, and I had to think, no, this has nothing to do with my life. I can offer universal love for you regardless of your gender, your sexuality, your racial heritage, your country of origin, and unless it's for revenge, regardless of your actions. I've chosen two cards to come together. Personally, I do think tarot includes some intuitive function. I actually, and this might surprise you, my early publicity or my early advertising did not use the word intuitive at all. And I really tried to focus on psychological reading of the cards. But who was I kidding? I'm a shaman who happens to read cards. Much of my reading is actually really intuitive. I don't think you have to be intuitive, but I think reading the cards will naturally bring out your intuitive self. And we read the cards because we want to look at a situation from a different angle. People often come to me and they almost apologize for a question they have. And I say to them, if your question was simple, you wouldn't be here, you'd have answered it. You've come to me because you want a second opinion on something that's happening in your life. If you've got other cards, we could go through every one of the cards, but I'm not going to. But if you think I've missed out a really important card, do let me know. Pop it in the comments.